This is Scott Richmond.
And Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. Good morning, Arnie. How are you?
You know, I'm doing good. It's a great Sunday.
It is.
We finally have summer in Missoula, Montana.
We do.
As you know, 2.5 weeks ago, it snowed here, 4 inches, and now we're in the 80s. We completely skipped spring. We went right from gray, overcast winter into summer. And summer, you know, brings up a lot of thoughts of getting ready and being in shape for all the great things you can do in Montana outdoors. You know, hiking, and I know that you jog, and you know, all of the other fishing and playing golf and all those sorts of things. And you know, it brought to mind we might be useful to our listeners to have a show on health, diet, and exercise for the summer.
Great timing.
You know, and it's always everybody's New Year's resolution. By far, the overwhelming New Year's, I'm going to lose weight.
It took a
I'm
while.
going to get in shape. You know, I'm going to exercise.
Yeah.
And I know what happens in the winter. It peters off. I remember seeing on Facebook your routes for your jogs, and all of a sudden they kind of disappeared.
They do.
Yeah, because, you know, it's
tiring.
Crappy weather, and, you know, it's cold, and, you know, but now it's summer, and there's no excuse for it. So we're going to, I think, on this show, focus on that whole arena, and because it's all interwoven of health and diet and exercise, and you know, the right kinds of foods and the right kind of preparation.
Right.
You know, every summer I have great expectations of getting my golf game to the point where I can enter the pro tour, and always about halfway through the summer I twitch my back, I pull something.
Right.
And
I remember last year.
Yeah. So this year I'm engaged in a preventative program, and a guy in town here named Mike Belkowski. Great name for a person who.
Where's he from?
He's from Missoula, Montana. Grew up here.
Perfect.
He has a company called Proactive Health, and he's going to be on the show to talk about nutrition and dietetics and sports medicine and physiology and dry needling and stuff like blood flow restriction therapy. All these interesting, you know, techniques.
So he does Eastern and Western techniques.
A whole mixture of things, and diet, which is
very important. Nutrition,
critically important. And diet, as you know, is very confusing. You know, think about it. There's the Palm Beach diet, Atkins diet, Mediterranean diet, ketogenic diet, paleo diet. Now the hot craze is the Whole30 diet.
Right.
And every one of those diets have permutations, so that you have, if you're following, you know, like Atkins, there are variations of Atkins where you can have certain foods and then other variations.
Dairy in some, none in the others.
You know, you don't know what you're supposed to be eating.
Yeah.
And that reminds me, it's reminiscent of the 1973 movie Sleeper. Do you remember Sleeper with Woody Allen?
Of course. One of my
favorites. One of the great movies where he played Miles Monroe. And he was, as you might remember, he owned a health food store. And he goes in, you know, cryogenics or whatever, and they put him to sleep for 200 years. And he comes back 200 years in the future to find out that everything he believed about health food was wrong. You know, salt and steak are good for you.
Right.
You know, vegetables are bad for you.
And the what's the orb?
The orb. Well, you know, it looked like President Trump a week ago in the Middle East all had their hands on the same orb that Woody Allen had in the 1973 movie. But I think even then, from 1973, they were questioning, you know, whether the things that we believe were healthy were wrong. You know, some people talk about just reducing calories, you know, and then exercise. How much exercise? You know, some people are now saying, you know, 20 minutes a day is enough. And you don't have to really get into very, you know, heavy exercise, just moderate exercise.
Right.
Works. But even the basics about, you know, salt. Salt's bad for you. All of a sudden, salt's good for you. You know, you need in some diets more salt.
How about dairy?
Dairy, good. You know, good for you. Cholesterol. Now, some doctors are questioning whether there's any correlation between cholesterol.
My doctors always question that.
You know, so I mean, how do you know what's right or wrong?
Sure.
And I think what makes sense, and what we'll talk about today, and I think what will come out of today's discussion, is it's kind of customized in a way based on your lifestyle and what you're interested in doing and your age and your patterns in order to make sure you can have a a holistic approach to this.
We'll be posting some links to our guest's website, I would imagine, in addition to this show, off of our Facebook page.
Right, and just to point out about Mike, that he's not just
A flash in the pan.
Yeah, flash in the pan. I mean, he has a bachelor's degree in exercise science, and he has a doctorate in physical therapy
From the university?
From the University of
Wow.
Montana. He's a certified health coach. He's a certified strength and conditioning specialist. So he really has a broad range of skills that are and areas that are interconnected, along with his personal, interest in dietetics and the right kind of diet to maximize your lifestyle.
Well, we're looking forward to having our guest Mike join us, and we are listening, or you are listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, proudly presented by Dawn Maddox, Glacier Sotheby's International Realty. Back after this with The Health and You on KGVO. Okay, we are back with our guest, Mike Belkowski.
Mike, it's good to have you here today. How are we doing?
Doing great, Arnie. Thanks for having me.
So tell us this. How'd you get into this, area? I mean, you have a lot of training and certification. What motivated you to start your career in this area?
I guess it's my passion for wanting to help people ultimately. And so being an athlete, being very active, being curious about the body. And of course, there's always that classic, you have your instance of having physical therapy, which I had freshman year in high school when I had an avulsion fracture on my hip, playing football. And
where'd you play football?
Sentinel High School.
Okay. And you grew up here in Missoula, right, Mike?
Born and raised. So playing football at Sentinel. Went through PT, and I was just so impressed at how much knowledge the physical therapist has of the body, biomechanics, anatomy, physiology. It blew me away, and that's something I wanted to have. So it was a combination of that and then just the passion for wanting to help people.
Mike worked on me the other day and beat me up so bad that all my old pains, I didn't feel any of them anymore.
New pain.
Not the new pains. It was perfect.
Well, it's not physical therapy. It's pain and torture. That's what PT is.
Yeah, exactly. So when someone comes in to see you, what's the typical, if there is a typical kind of a client that you have?
Typical client. Well, seeing that I have kind of such an array of services, I'm not just a physical therapist. I'm also doing that health coaching. I'm also doing quote-unquote personal training. So some people just want to get fit. They want to lose weight, or they're coming in with pain. So that's where the physical therapy or the dry needling comes into play.
Mike, quick question. So just to go back a little bit, you grew up here in Missoula, Sentinel High School. You did your graduate and postgraduate here at the U?
Correct, yep.
Okay. And how long ago did you graduate?
A year ago.
A year ago?
2016.
And you started your own practice while you were in school or after you graduated?
Afterwards. So I worked in a clinic for about 5 months, and it was really after taking a dry needling course. The dry needling course, I was so impressed with, A, how many different pathologies you can treat, and B, how quickly.
What is dry needling, just to illustrate for our audience?
So everyone always says, is that like acupuncture? And it's like, yeah, the needles are exactly the same, but it's the theories and the foundations that differentiate it. So acupuncture is derived from Eastern Chinese medicine,
right,
where the philosophies are based on 2,500 years ago, the meridian lines, energy flows, and so really 2,500 years ago they were poking needles into people and kind of seeing they're getting therapeutic benefits,
right,
and then they kind of made the meridian lines to kind of fit the paradigm of what they were treating. They didn't know really how they were treating, or I shouldn't say how, but what they were treating.
Right.
So they made these meridian lines to kind of fit and say, oh, this is how we're going to treat you, and this is why it works. So 2,500 years later, we have dry needling that's developed in the 50s, 60s, and has really come to fruition the past couple of decades, where it's very research-based, scientifically based anatomy, physiology, neurology, and so much more scientifically based. You have to have a rich education in the sciences, in the medical field, versus acupuncture is just a profession where you don't have to have that medical background.
And I can tell you.
But you're doing cupping too, which is...
Yeah, what you're talking about.
Cupping doesn't necessarily take a certification.
Right, no, I know. Are the needles, tell me, physically, so you're following where the needles go, but they don't puncture the skin?
Yeah.
Or they
do, yes.
They do, okay.
So in dry needling, you're treating the nervous system. So that's kind of where the meridian lines come into play.
I see.
The Chinese and those who used acupuncture 2,500 years ago again, didn't really know why they were getting the therapeutic benefits, thus the meridian lines. If you put the meridian lines over the human body, it darn near matches the nervous system.
Okay.
So they didn't know they were treating the nervous system, but
that's what they're doing.
that's what was happening. So
They
here we are.
refined it to really find the
Exactly.
parts.
I've
of the nervous system.
I've done acupuncture.
Well, I did
and
the dry
acupressure.
needling, and I have to tell you, I confess to crimes that I didn't even commit.
Did you really?
No,
You sang
it
like a
was-
canary?
It was virtually painless, and it had immediate impact.
So, well, I've had acupuncture. So, is it of the same thing where I'm on my stomach and or I'm on my back and you are tapping them into the different parts of the body, or is it? You know,
Again, it's patient dependent. Like, what is your pain? Why
Right.
do you have a mechanism of injury? Age, health, that all plays a factor.
I see.
But in essence, yes. So you come into me with shoulder pain, let's say, and already in my mind, I'm developing some points I want to needle based on the nervous system.
I
I
see.
know I can get therapeutic benefits at the shoulder.
Excellent.
So really, I can treat down the arm as long as I'm treating the same nerves that innervate the shoulder and or at the neck. I can stick needles in nerves that innervate that shoulder.
What does what does innervate mean?
So the nervous system is used for sensory and to contract muscles.
Right.
So nerves that either innervate the skin surface or the muscles in
They
that
feed
area.
into-
Exactly.
Right.
Okay.
In your case, they will be hanging you upside down on a rope and treating you
Well,
the way you need to be treated.
I'm a big fan of acupuncture. Have had it several times and went through for a variety of different maladies.
Absolutely, it works.
And
works
and
wonders.
acupressure too.
So-
But real quickly, so I'm interested in this the dry needling thing, because I really could use something different. Like I can't find anyone here to do acupuncture, in Missoula.
Mhm.
And granted, I haven't looked all that deep, but I'm from New
Sure.
York, and they're a dime a dozen.
Sure.
But the good ones are not.
Mhm.
But anyway, it sounds like this is an interesting mode of treatment. How long does someone have to when they're doing dry needling? How long are they on the table for, or are they in that position for?
You're going to get tired of this answer, but it depends, which is the
Got
answer
it. Based
we
on
heard.
the patient.
Yeah, we heard about 10 times a day in PT school. But so it depends on your pathology, depends what we're treating, and it depends on your health. So dry needling is going to be as effective as you are healthy, and it depends on how severe your
I
injury
see.
or pathology is.
Right.
Because what dry needling does is it kind of, every time you stick a needle in, you're creating a lesion in the body, or you're creating this sterile inflammatory process that activates your healing mechanisms, your immune system, your cardiovascular system, neural system. So really, the needle is the facilitator to activate your healing system.
I see.
So
Right.
you're using your own body's systems to heal or to decrease your pain.
So share with our listeners for a moment what cupping is. I mean, some of them are familiar with it from watching the Olympics and
Oh, absolutely.
and
Michael
Michael Phelps.
having all those dots on his body, right?
Yeah.
So cupping is another, traditional Chinese medicine treatment technique. And in the same sense of dry needling creating this sterile inflammatory response, again, activating your own body's healing systems, cupping creates a distraction in the skin and, again, improves blood flow by nature of that distraction, and, again, creating the sterile inflammatory response, just in a different way.
Sure. It isn't it, I mean, because I remember in having acupressure and acupuncture, it was all about trying to bring blood flow to
Absolutely.
an area that
Absolutely.
had trauma or was wounded.
And so then you're thinking, again, with microcirculatory issues like you're saying, you're going to have decreased blood flow to that area of
Right.
your pathology. So you have decreased oxygen, decreased nutrients. And then as well, you have decreased ability for that lymph and or that edema to get out of the joint.
I see.
In addition to cupping and dry needling, you are the only person in this area that does blood flow restriction therapy, right?
Correct. Yeah, I just got certified last month. I actually did my in-service down in Florida, which was my last internship. I did my in-service on blood flow restriction training or therapy, whatever you want to call it. And
Explain that, because I went through and I thought it was terrific,
sure.
but our listeners may not be familiar with it.
And so I'm as excited about blood flow restriction training for its strengthening capabilities as I am about dry needling for its pain decreasing capabilities. So with blood flow restriction training, you occlude a limb and or limbs that you're going to be working out. And so, for example, Arnie, let's say you're squatting. You usually squat 200 pounds in the weight room.
Right.
And so in that traditional paradigm of muscle strengthening hypertrophy gains, you want to lift 70 to 80% of your 1 rep max.
Right.
If that makes sense. And so you lift 200 pounds normally to attain those benefits. With blood flow restriction, we would occlude your legs, and you would lift 40, 50, 60 pounds.
And get the same benefits.
And get the exact same benefits as if you were lifting the 200 pounds, but you're lifting such a light intensity, you're not breaking any muscle fibers, so you're not going to have any soreness, you're not going to cause any inflammatory response. So if we take this out into, how do we apply this? We have people post ACL, post rotator cuff, people that are in too much pain and or too weak to lift these heavy weights, but they still want to accrue those benefits. And so, again, they're able to lift their light intensity they would normally in PT or OT. But by doing BFR, blood flow restriction, you're going to accrue benefits as if you're lifting that heavier weight.
Right.
So there's no other way you can attain this in your post-rehab state and or take it to the geriatric population. Right.
And there's a piece of equipment that's attached to you that helps.
Correct. The monitors, the pressure the whole time.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool. Our guest is Mike Belkowski. He is with, his company is Proactive Health. And your website is what, Mike?
Proactive Health, MT as in Montana.com.
ProactiveHealthMT.com. You're listening to What Do You Know? Proudly supported by Don Maddox, Glacier Sotheby's International Realty. Arnie.
So getting in shape, whether it's preventative or it's in response to, a physical injury of some sort, also includes, and I would imagine almost any case, weight loss. People want to lose weight.
Sure.
And get in shape.
Sure, who doesn't, right?
Right, who doesn't? And we were talking earlier about, you got Atkins diet, Mediterranean diet, ketogenic, paleo, this whole 30, just cutting calories. What is your take on all this? I mean, I know you've studied it and you're passionate about it. What should most people be paying attention to, and what kind of diet really makes the most sense for being healthy?
So I'm an advocate for anything that decreases or mitigates inflammation in your body. Because inflammation is more or less the root of a myriad of, majority of pathologies, chronic diseases.
Most diseases, that people are suffering, particularly people that are living longer, are related to inflammation. Clearly.
Well, sure. What does that mean, though, inflammation? So, like, there is your blood flow is restricted, and what's inflammation?
It's kind of, so like when you can look at it as, it's your body's way of saying there's something going on. There's something happening incorrectly and or there's an injury happening. It's your body's signal.
So if my knees are inflamed because my cartilage is reduced.
Sure, bone on bone. There's something going on. That's your body's way of.
And then I inflame, my knee gets, right.
Fibromyalgia for lots of people,
right.
An inflammation that causes a lot of pain.
It's a warning signal, more or less. In a couple of words.
How do you solve for it? Depends, right? That's what you do.
No.
Solve for
the problem, inflammation.
Like, so we can talk about inflammation. Like you roll your ankle.
Right.
Boom, you have inflammation. You can visually see it.
Right.
Then you have, if we're talking about diet, the systemic inflammation, and that's really what led to this precipitous increase in your obesity, your type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. All of this stems from inflammation, and I would argue predominantly comes from diet and lifestyle habits in general. We live in a society.
And there are certain foods that lead to inflammation.
Sure. You have your vegetable oils, your canola, soybean, cottonseed. Then you just have your processed foods, fast foods, packaged foods. All these have some sort of chemical or altered oil or food in them that when consumed, your body reacts in a way you can't feel. You're not going to feel it.
Right.
Your blood, for lack of a better term, doesn't have a sensory in it per se.
So it's being faked out.
Yeah. So it takes months. It takes years until you see the effects of this inflammation in your body.
Mike, I try to do paleo diet and try to do no carbs and ketosis. What is it?
Ketosis.
Ketogenic diet.
Ketogenic diet. All of that, and I end up, I'm so hungry when I'm on those diets.
That you're having a pizza while you're.
Well, I'll go to Costco. I'll grab that salami from the sliced salami. I'll literally eat half a bag of it,
right.
And then with mustard. So I'm doing all the right things. I'm eating the food, but I'm just eating so much of it, and I don't know what to do. It's like I want to do those diets, and in the past,
I think that's a common phenomenon. People feel they failed somehow, or it didn't work because. And,
Well, how
and
long do you have to
probably-
go through it?
Well, probably it's because you have to be
So,
strict
right.
about it.
Let's say
You have to be very devout, very strict on your carb restriction. In several books and articles I've read say you have to restrict those carbs for 3 weeks. Because if you're in a carb-dependent state, in order to
I
kind
hate
of alter...
carbs, by the way, except
Yep.
beer
Oh, of course, naturally.
and alcohol.
And that's a different story.
Right.
But
Go start.
so as far as like reprogramming your genes is what we call it, in order to become, in order for your body to use fat to kind of produce ketones, you have to do it for a solid 3 weeks.
And ketones, by the
It's-
way, are what in a different context, it's what diabetics produce, and that's why people who end up getting diabetes.
Right.
And that's
lose so
and that's
much weight.
ke- and that's
So much-
ketoacidosis. That's a
Right.
whole different story.
Right.
People commonly get this whole ketogenic diet confused with ketoacidosis, completely separate.
Right.
A keto diet's not dangerous.
No, it's not.
No.
But I'm
It's
saying,
not dangerous.
but removing ketones from your body does lead to weight loss.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And so back to you, Scott. Like, why didn't it work?
Why did I stop doing it? Because I just like,
How long did you give it a try?
oh God, like weeks, months.
And how strict were you with your carb restriction?
Very.
Like-
all right.
So like, what are we talking
Now
about?
we're going to confess on
No,
the
that's
air.
the tough part though. 'Cause
Hello, is this on?
It's a very fragile state. It's very difficult to get into a ketotic state. Very easy to fall out of it.
Yeah, you have to use the strips, to check your ketones.
Just like blood
Is that
glucose
right?
strips.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
What
if
do you pee on them?
yeah,
No, it's like you prick your finger like a blood glucose
Oh.
strip.
you can do blood.
That's more accurate
That's more accurate than the other
Urine.
one, the urine one.
Okay, so
And less
so-
messy.
and less, especially when you're on the road.
But what you find is you might not realize that you did a little variation, but you'll stop eliminating ketones,
Sure.
and then you're not losing any weight.
So, okay, because that's the practicality of some of these things, and then putting them in practice and sticking with them is always where I come up short. Like
That's
I
the
did,
toughest part.
Yeah, I did Atkins in the beginning. I did paleo, a version of ketosis.
Right, and for our listeners, by the way, who have not met Scott,
Yeah.
he's not particularly overweight. He's just trying to be in better shape and more.
No, but I have a gut, so I'm trying to. I want to be a little. I like to run, and when I'm too heavy, it hurts to run.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
that's where
like
you come see me for physical therapy.
right. It's like the chicken or the egg.
He gets you one way or another. Scott is the point.
So now I started to bike.
Now you see my model. No. And so I used to be in the paradigm of where my diet's never been poor, but it wasn't great. I just tried to out-exercise it. And I think to a
Right,
certain degree,
right.
a lot of people try to do that. Like, they don't eat terribly, but they don't eat great. And they just try to out-exercise that poorer diet.
You know.
It's impossible. You
But
can't
for
do that.
example, let me go back to the.
So what do you do?
You address the diet. You have to address the diet.
So the diet is the
That's paramount.
origin for everything.
Right,
If people want to lose weight, if they want to look better, you have to address the diet.
right.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts. That's about 80% of your physique, whether it's weight loss, aesthetics, what have you.
And you're working with a genetic makeup, so certain people react differently to other.
Genetic
diets.
makeup is a fraction. I would say 5% or less.
Really?
So like genetics come into play like in the Olympics.
So if my my metabolic rate is faster than someone else, I mean, isn't that? How does that work?
That comes into play with you see people who can eat whatever they want, but they look skinny.
Yeah.
But what are they doing to their insides? Like ultimately,
I
what's
see.
their health?
Right.
Not great.
So I want to go focus back on the keto diet. What are you supposed to eat and what are you not supposed to eat?
I
I mean,
so,
people who are listeners can go and research these diets, but in general
Sure.
terms, what are you giving up and what are you focusing on in your daily eating patterns?
So, like Scott was saying, you've done the paleo diet.
Yeah.
So that's basically restrict carbs and then eat everything else in moderation, more or less. Kind of eat a lot of fats, eat a moderate amount of protein, and enjoy other delicacies. Your fruits and your dark chocolate and your wines in moderation.
Yeah.
Ketogenic or the ketogenic diet is the next step. It's much more strict. So now you're taking your fat and you're going to eat 80%, possibly 90% of your intake is going to be fat. And then a majority of the rest is going to be protein, which is not very much. And then the carbs that you may have will come from your veggies and or your nuts. So yes, I do eat carbs, but what you don't have is your bakery items. So Your cakes, your muffins, your bagels, or you don't have your juices because that's fructose. That's all. That's pure sugar.
I've cut all that out. You see?
Yeah, but well, you have to be careful. For example,
Pastas.
we talk about nuts. So you get some nut butters, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at most of them, they have sugar in them.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yes.
Like
all the name brand.
Right, like in town
How about
here.
Kirkland almond butter?
Well, you got to look at it. But I know, for example, in town here, you got Bridget Baxter has a company called Moxie-Nosh.
Oh, sure.
And she makes, cashew butter and almond butter.
Okay.
And all it has in it is the nuts and salt, essentially, and,
no preservatives.
There's no sugar.
That's where things come into play when those
the
preservatives.
sugar.
Yep, absolutely.
The preservatives and the sugar, because lots of the commercial brands have, if you take a look at how, they have 3 or 4 or 5 grams per couple of teaspoons of sugar, and that adds up.
Absolutely.
So if you're eating it on a regular basis.
So if you're talking about a ketogenic diet, or you want to get in a ketogenic state, or a ketone adapted state, we're talking 50 grams of carbs or less. You're going to eat hundreds of carbs in one meal at a McDonald's or a Taco Bell, or even at just a restaurant in general.
Those places.
Yeah. Even if you're just having, go ahead.
I was going to say, sometimes you're like on this diet, you're doing good, and then you're out at a business event,
right?
And somebody brings you a salad. And you say, well, salad's good, except it's got, it's got a terribly sugar dressing on it.
So Arnie and I, we talk a lot about food on this show because we're
makes
both
me
from
hungry.
back east.
It makes me hungry for him.
So we're both from back east, and so I will be doing really well on a diet. Then I'm like, oh, I'm going to New York, and if I'm going to New York, then it's going to be Chinese food because you can't get any here, and pizza, and those are crap. Those are terrible for me.
Right.
I know,
but you got to live a little, right?
Absolutely,
right?
And that's what I did.
So what happens if you go off it for a day or two? What are you
cares?
supposed to do?
Again,
you can get back on.
I live by kind of like the 80-20% rule, meaning you adhere to whatever paradigm you're doing, paleo, ketogenic, Mediterranean. You adhere to it at least 80% of the time. You got to live a little.
Yes.
You're going to have occasions. You're going to have weddings. You're going to have birthdays. So you don't have to be. Yeah, exactly.
But one of the things that I found just based on past experience, if you stick to a keto diet for like a year, and then you go off for a weekend, you feel sick.
You can, once you've gone from this carb-dependent state into the fat-adapted state, and like Arnie said, you go back and you have a piece of candy or ice cream or pop or whatever you used to have before where your body did not react. Once you become fat-adapted and you start having those quote-unquote garbage foods, your body reacts. It doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Let's do a quick ID. Our guest is Mike Belkowski from Proactive Health here in Missoula, Montana. He's a Missoula, Montana native, graduate of the program. Very interesting thing that I'd like to ask Mike is, boy, he's diplomaed up. I mean, he really has. I mean, that becoming a PT is no walk in the park.
Right.
Then on top of that,
he's a doctor. He's a doctor.
Right, a
Belkowski.
doctor. I mean, you really are. You've gone in full force here. What really motivated you to do that? Was it just a desire to learn more?
Lifelong learner. I've always been that way, and just kind of self-improvement. I mean, you can always find ways to self-improve, mentally, physically, spiritually. And I just always like to be a self-improver. So even during PT schools, when I found the book that kind of set me on this diet path called The Primal Blueprint by Mark Sisson. And so I read that. My mom gave it to me, I think it was after my first year of PT school. Read it, and then a couple months later, he came out with this health coach program, pretty rigorous, 15 chapters, 15 tests. So while I was taking my internship in Seattle, I was also taking this health coach program.
You did an internship in Seattle as a PT.
Correct.
Where did you work
there. The first time I was at what was called University of Washington Northwest Hospital. I think that's changed since now. And then the second summer was at Harborview Medical Center.
Sure, famous. And that's a really, when you're doing PT work there, you're seeing a lot of people, a lot of different cases.
Socioeconomic statuses.
Oh my God,
out of this world.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Versus the population center here where it's, professors.
Yep. I want to talk a bit about prevention.
Yes, hence proactive, right?
Yeah, proactive. I led right into that. I see many guys that, it's finally warmed up here. They go out to the golf course. You've worked out at the golf course. They go out, they do a couple of knee bends, they twist a couple of times, and then they go out and try to drive the ball through. I mean, that's the worst possible thing you could do, right?
Sure.
You need to really, and I know people know this, but they don't take it seriously. But I think it really is important, and I think you would back that up, that you really have to get yourself into a not just the day of you're going to play golf, but into a little bit of a regiment so that you avoid the injuries. That a guy like look what has done to Tiger Woods, right?
Well, especially in Montana.
Tiger Woods, not a good example right now.
No.
He got off his ketosis diet.
Yeah.
Just a little bit this
Just a
past
little bit
weekend.
this past weekend. By the way, our friend here is looking at Mike's key ring, and Mike's a big Cleveland Cavaliers fan with his number 23 LeBron James
Best
adornment.
athlete in the world.
Yes.
Did you see that, Arnie?
Yeah, I saw that.
How do you feel about that? He's
Well,
a
LeBron
lifelong
James-
Knicks fan, as am I.
Well, it's okay. There's nothing.
We have nothing to cheer for.
You can't really criticize LeBron James.
Well,
And
you
I
got-
like LeBron James.
He's a physical specimen. He's,
Yeah.
Okay, but let me just a little bit of a diversion. But when he said he's going to take his talents to South Beach in 2010, I was offended.
Right.
As a Knicks fan, we thought he'd be a New York Knicks.
Yeah, well, he didn't go.
Yeah.
But I mean, NBA is a good example.
Yeah.
I watch, and you're going to watch him this coming week. You're going to watch Steph Curry, and I watch him play 40 minutes in a game. He doesn't sweat.
Incredible.
He has to be among one of the most, fit athletes
I mean,
out
look,
there.
Yeah, look at him.
I mean, he's just, as I said,
Cool as a cucumber, too.
I remember Michael Jordan and standing at the foul line, dripping. This guy has, the same kind of, speed and movement and mobility back and forth, like a rabbit. And he doesn't, it doesn't look like it has much of a physical effect on him.
He must be on that ketogenic diet,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm saying.
Is that right?
That's
No,
what
I
I'm
don't
thinking.
know.
No.
But I know, like when LeBron went down to
He's
South
on
Beach,
a ketogenic diet.
him and Dwayne Wade went on a paleo diet. It might have transitioned into ketogenic, but like he looks slim, he looks faster than ever. LeBron James, that is. He's never looked more healthy. And he's
Yeah,
older.
amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Isn't it amazing? Well, he's amazing on many levels, but his agility and his frame, I mean, it's unheard of.
Right.
It's, anyway.
So I want to get back. What should people do as they're preparing for a summer where there's a lot of physical outdoor activities, whether they're golfers or going to go fishing or hiking or any of those sorts of things? What kind of exercises make sense for folks to do?
Anything that gets you moving. I mean, sitting less, like you do, stand more.
Right.
Increase your cardio. If you're going to do an aggressive activity, such as anything that involves sprinting, basketball, football, your weekend warriors, you need to expose your muscles, your tendons, your ligaments to that before you do it. Meaning, if you're going to sprint like softball, go sprint once a week somewhere. Do some sprints, expose your tendons, expose your ligaments to that, because if you don't, and
stretching.
12 months pass by and you sign up for a softball league, you go to crack that first grounder and run to first, pop goes your Achilles because it's never been exposed to that type of stress for a whole year. So that's how those type of injuries happen. As far as like golfing, you're hiking, kind of lower intensity activities, basic dynamic stretching, which is stretching while moving, versus the classic paradigm of your static stretching. The research is coming out that you're going to actually decrease your injury rate with dynamic stretching, potentially increase it with static
you
stretching.
stretch while you go.
Basically, your butt kickers, or you're trying to kick your hands out in front of you. The karaoke. So all these dynamic activities are moving. They're going to increase your heart rate, thus increase your blood flow, and warm up your muscles, literally, before you perform an activity, so they're not cold, they're not stiff. Especially like on a nice morning before your golf and your muscles are nice and cold, and you go to swing the first pitch
Arnie.
on the first tee box.
We took a hike. Kathy, Maureen, and I took a hike around our neighborhood on Sunday.
Right.
And we went up that big incline, that big steep, right? But so you warm up going up the street, and then you go up that big thing,
Right.
all the way up past the trail,
Right.
like to the other side, almost looking at Grant Creek.
Yeah.
And that incline was so intense. We were talking about schwitzing, which is sweating.
Yeah.
You're sweating, and your heart rate goes up,
And you're breathing very
and
heavily.
you're breathing heavily, and you're so thankful to be at the end of that. But that's what you're talking about, is like you're
A little
gradually moving into it.
Exactly, yeah.
But I'm not like literally immediately hitting a steep incline.
Right, you're
then-
not going from the couch to the first tee box.
And Mike, there's been some
point.
discussion in recent past about how much is the right amount of exercise. You need to really do, an hour or 2 hours of, particularly as you're getting older, of heavy cardio type exercise, or is the 20 minutes a day of moderate, just as good and have just as much of a, or close to as much of an effect?
So that's kind of a loaded question.
Sure.
Questions, in the sense. So what I'm thinking, since we're talking about diet, since we're talking about inflammation, we need to understand that the higher the intensity of the activity, the more you get your heart rate up, the more that your body's going to want to use glucose.
Right.
The lower the intensity of the activity, the more you're going to burn fat or utilize fat. So if you're into losing weight, if you're into getting systemic inflammation out, mitigate that or prevent that from happening, you want to pair a high-fat diet with low-intensity, consistent exercise.
Right.
Those are going to play into each other's hands. Versus, if you're always sprinting, if you're always doing these high-intensity hikes where your heart rate's up for quite a while,
right,
your body's going to want glucose because that's what the body requires with higher intensity activities.
Right.
So to answer your question, depends what your goal is. Depends, what you
where
want.
You fill in.
Mm-hmm.
Fill
Right.
in
There's no simple answer. It just depends on your profile of your program. So either way, movement,
consistency.
Keep moving. But
yeah.
so when you get home after a high intensity workout, what should you do? Like, you're hungry, or do you drink first and kind of like get some water in your body and hydrate?
Protein's pretty important. I say that.
Repair needs.
Yep, especially if you're lifting weights, if you're tearing muscle fibers. But if you're just doing your hike where it's high intensity with a heart rate,
right?
I would just stay within the paradigm of the diet you're in, whether that's ketogenic or paleo. Just replenish the fuel.
But don't put glucose. Don't go.
You don't have to, because
right,
if you adhere to your diet, whether it's the ketogenic or paleo, what have you, the more fat adapted you are, your body will start to use fat during those higher intensity activities. It'll use more fat than glucose, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if you're going on your same hike today, you're probably going to want to use a lot of glucose. If you adhere to the ketogenic diet for a month, for 8 weeks, you'll burn more fat doing the same hike.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Your body's going to adapt.
Okay.
So what happens? Let's say we put Scott on this regime, and I'll watch him every day to make sure he's not eating birthday cake. And let's say he gets rid of the gut he wants to get rid of, and he gets into shape, and it takes him 3 months to do it.
Mm-hmm.
What happens then? I mean, if you moderate this diet, can you keep the weight off?
Absolutely. That's what's cool about the ketogenic diet is you lose the weight and you really don't have to stress or change anything to keep it off. Whereas these other diets, you're restricting calories or you're exercising excessively, which also plays into that systemic inflammation. So it's hard to adhere to for a long period of time. You get burnt out literally, metaphorically, versus the ketogenic diet, paleo diet. You just do the same thing day in and day out. You don't have to stress about it. You don't say I have to go and lift 5 times a week in order to maintain what I have. It's very liberating. You exercise when you want. Under the paradigm of these diets, there's a lot of variety. People think in a high-fat, low-carb diet, they're going to not have a lot to eat.
Right.
There's
but
quite
I've seen
a
the
bit.
cookbooks and the recipe books. They're
absolutely.
pretty extensive.
It's the thing that I get hung up on. Maybe is the alcohol because
Yes,
because
let's talk
hey,
about
we live
that.
in Montana.
Yeah, let's talk about alcohol.
We live in Montana, where this is a very
High per capita drinking.
right.
Sure, a lot of distilleries, a lot of breweries, microbreweries.
Right.
And now even cideries.
Festive.
Exactly, yep.
Which are even sweeter.
They're great. by the way.
I know, they are great.
It's festive. Anyway,
Sure.
how do you moderate your intake of that other than just practice abstention?
Put a muzzle on. I don't know.
But are there substitutes? Well, there are substitutes. Are there?
O'Doul's.
Right. So how do you work your way through that when you're starting a what is it?
Ketogenic diet.
Ketogenic diet.
So I was talking, I think, to Arnie about this yesterday, perhaps, about the whole
He doesn't
alcohol
like to drink,
paradigm.
by the way.
Yeah.
No one does. Whenever you have or consume alcohol, your body's going to preferentially burn that first. So if you have a beer or if you have wine with every meal, it doesn't matter if it's a high carb or high fat diet, your body's going to preferentially burn the alcohol
First.
exactly, and then whatever you consumed. But if you have a beer or two or a glass of wine or two at dinner, your body's probably going to sit or take the whole time you're sitting down to have that meal just to burn off that alcohol. Everything you consume is going to the gut, more or less.
It's not being worked on.
Especially if you're in a carb dependent state where literally physiologically you don't have access to the fat on your body to use as energy.
I see.
So that's where the ketogenic diet comes into play. It reverses that. So once you become ketone adapted or fat adapted, i.e. you're no longer you don't have to have that constant feed of glucose.
Right.
Your body can literally access the fat on your body. It can use it as energy in times of where you're hungry or especially with endurance activities, running, biking, hiking, your body can access the fat on your body. You're not going to bonk out.
And okay, so
again, to get back to your alcohol,
yeah,
You have to restrict it. I would never say just cut it out 100% if you enjoy it. I mean, if it's something you enjoy with a meal or with a certain activity, by all means. But just know, in the presence of food, it's going to burn that first. Likely, the food you're eating is going to go to fat storage.
What are the least problematic of the alcohol family?
Red wine.
Red wine.
Red wine.
That's my favorite.
Gin, because it's not rye or grain based.
Right.
So all the beers grain based.
How about a grape based vodka?
Vodka's no.
Exactly.
No,
Derived
hanger
from rice,
one.
right?
Hanger
Well,
one.
vodka's potatoes.
Potato. Yep.
Yeah.
Starch.
That's a starch, but there are grape based vodkas.
Yeah.
That they're distilled
Sure.
from that, Arnie.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Our guest is
grappa.
Grappa.
Yeah.
Mike Belkowski is our guest from Proactive Health at www.proactivemt, right? Proactive MT or
Proactive Health MT.
proactivehealthmt.com.
So in some ways, for example, as we do follow up, if you're going to drink wine at a meal, it's better to drink it after you eat than before you eat.
Or drink it while you're cooking.
Right.
Or drink it while you're cooking, so you're.
Or like if
drinking
you're doing
active
like an outdoor activity, like like a lawn game or something. Drink it then.
while you're active.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it burns quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, how important is sleep? And
Huge. Paramount.
and again, it feels sometimes like the chicken and the egg. If I eat poorly and I drink too much, my sleep is interrupted.
Mhm.
So you've got to, when you get on a ketogenic diet, how does that impact your sleep?
Positively.
Positive. How come? Because you're not having a bunch of sugars running through you.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you consume like your desserts, like right before you go to bed, you're gonna have this huge surge of energy with the blood glucose, and then it quickly drops.
Yes. I bet.
And it messes with like your serotonin and your other hormones while you sleep, so you're not able to get necessarily that same deep or REM sleep cycle that you usually would otherwise.
Right.
Mike, do you take any supplements? Any like vitamins or things like that?
Yes. Quite a few.
Quite a few.
Well
Which ones are
researched.
essential to you?
Vitamin D, especially in Montana,
Right.
There's no sun for 8
and that's
months.
not a vitamin. I mean, that's more or less a hormonal precursor.
Right.
Vitamin D is the big one. Fish oil, especially one with high DHA, that's an anti-inflammatory.
Okay.
Turmeric, because again, that's another.
Right.
Yep, that's another anti-inflammatory.
Right.
So everything I take is
About reducing inflammation.
about reducing inflammation. So again, the big ones: fish oil, vitamin D, turmeric.
Sure.
And then from that, it's kind of like if you want to spend more money, and it depends what your goal is.
CoQ10.
So, very good. So I take ubiquinol, which is the what happens after you take CoQ10. Your body breaks it down into ubiquinol.
I see.
So as you age, even if you get past 30, your body is able to utilize CoQ10 less well because it takes energy to break it down. So by
you go
having
directly to ubiquinol.
exactly,
Which is-
so your
I
body doesn't
take
have to
that.
break it down.
Do
So
you?
Yeah.
so it's for the same reasons: heart health,
I know
theoretically
some taking stuff.
improves your cardio.
Well, what's so interesting about this discussion is
Mhm.
we're approaching it from, dietary and weight loss. I've been involved in some other work in which people are studying how to cure Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease.
Sure.
And the new treatment modalities are all based on reducing inflammation.
And that comes from getting the grains, getting the gluten out of the diet.
Yeah, I mean it's looking at
It's pretty crazy.
taking supplements like the ones we talked about, and mixing them with the right kind of diet so that inflammation is reduced and has an effect on
Mhm.
again,
Sure.
all of these long-term diseases that as we live longer, more and more people
More prevalent.
Yeah,
They
more
become-
prevalent because the diet has taken such an effect on you, and people don't. By the time they're 60 or 70, are not generally going to change
Exactly.
their diet.
Exactly.
Right.
So they're stuck with a diet that continually inflames,
Inflames,
their system.
Right.
So let's do this. Let's take a quick break. Our
Right.
guest is Mike Belkowski. We'll take a quick break. We're going to come back with a nice long final segment to go over anything that we didn't get to cover in our first segment.
Right.
We'll be back after this with What Do You Know? All right, we're back with Mike Belkowski on What Do You Know? Arnie's got a really interesting story he wants to tell us about the biggest loser.
We were talking on the break about the biggest loser and how do you take weight off and keep it off and
That's the key for keeping it off.
Yeah, I mean, keeping it off. So about 25 years ago, when I was a mere child, there were 6 of us that worked together, and we all decided we were getting flabby and we needed to get in shape.
Right.
And we realized we wouldn't do anything if just talking about it So we had to put money on the line. So each of us tossed in $500. It was $3,000.
Wow.
And I brought in a health meter scale, and everybody got on the scale and weighed in. And the bet was whoever took the most weight off in 6 weeks won, but they wouldn't collect until 6 weeks later, where they had to weigh in again and have
kept it off.
Not gained.
And was it proportionate to your initial weight?
Just straight up. We didn't want.
How the heck does that work?
Well, because
So if
everybody
you're 6'6",
was
it's not fair.
Everybody was about to say
exactly. That's
well,
tough.
We're two small guys here.
well, 6'6", yeah.
You should have done it like a percentage of your
Yes.
body weight.
I know, but we were not as smart as.
Where was this that you worked?
This was in Kansas City, Missouri, at
Ribs, by the way.
S&G SGA Communications, and we were all about the same size. We all needed to lose about the most amount, about the same amount of weight. I happened to have won. I lost 26 pounds in 6 weeks,
And kept it off.
And kept it off, and so I collected on it. But it wasn't. I mean, that really leads to this whole thing of health coaching. How do you get yourself in a position where you're motivated enough to really stick with it, and then once you hit your goal, keep maintaining what you want to do?
Well, I think that part of that is once you see the results, that should be some motivation. And again, under these paradigms of where you're trying to over-exercise, or you have this very regimented, having to work out 5 days a week and then restrict your calories, this and that, it's tough to be compliant with. Number one thing is compliance.
Well, a lot of people, for example, like they'll cut themselves to 1,000 calories and do it for 5 days, and they get on the scale and they only lost a pound. They say, "Screw this."
Sure.
Right, and they don't realize, if they're drinking a lot of water, they might be retaining, half a gallon of water, and that weighs, 4 pounds or 5 pounds. But tell me about health coaching in general. What's the concept behind that?
So to give a person structure and more or less a sounding board, it's just some education on nutrition, because I think, especially me growing up, the nutrition I learned kind of led us down this path of current increase in obesity, increase in type 2 diabetes. So I'm saying we need to kind of question the status quo. For some reason, back in the 1960s, when we were told to go to high carb, low fat, because high fat was leading to heart disease.
Right.
For some reason, we had this exponential growth in type 2 diabetes, obesity that we see today. And so...
Right, and there's even some question today whether cholesterol is even linked as strongly to heart disease as we were led to believe up until recently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So cholesterol isn't a bad thing. In the presence of systemic inflammation, yes, it's detrimental. That's the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So health coaching is, especially coming from my background, the Primal Health Coach program, is patient education. That comes with physical therapy, education the patient. That's why you're coming to see a professional, is to learn what you don't know. And then, again, giving you a structured program and walking you through it, meet your goals, and then giving you something to continue to have the long-term results.
So how many patients do you currently see at any given time?
As far as just overall?
Just during the week, people that come in for private consultations, whether it be for exercise or health coaching.
So right now, I've only been open for about a month. And last week I had 13 or 15 people come in.
Wow.
So, considering it's been a month, yes. So the last couple of weeks it's been picking up. And again, I get a little bit of everything, which is what I love about what I do. I have the running analyses, physical therapy, dry needling, blood flow restriction training, health coaching. So a little bit of everything, and that's what I see.
That's great.
Yeah.
So
sorry.
You're going to be able to hire more people at some point, because it's going to be hard to find people who know what you know.
Exactly. And I definitely have some colleagues who appreciate and understand why I'm doing what I'm doing as far as the dry needling and the blood flow restriction training. So if I can find other colleagues who are on the same page as a business owner, get them credentialed,
right?
Especially with the dry needling, because that's very important to me. I want my patients and clients to have access to that. Blood flow training, if you're a physical therapist, very straightforward, very easy to administer to someone.
I like the PT aspect of what you do, because I think that's serious.
Yes.
That you had to do a lot to get there. And
absolutely.
And that's the thing to me that I think makes you different than a weight training guy.
Well, the other thing
it's one of the huge difference.
The other thing that makes Mike different is his passion for diet and understanding
nutrition.
Diet. Lots of times you might go to a physical therapist; they're not necessarily a dietitian.
Right.
They're just there working on your problem.
No, I
the
mean, I
physical
think
problem.
it's so. Mike, where are your offices located?
So I have one office. It's inside of Access Fitness. So it's located at 1906 Brook Street.
Okay.
So
What are
I've-
the hours
Right now, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5,
and phone number if people want to get in touch with you?
241-2473.
241-2473.
Correct.
Okay.
Or www.
Or W. Do
Proact-
you really put that in?
No,
Arnie,
no.
you're showing your age.
No.
Uh-huh.
Proactivemt.com.
Proactive Health.
Proactive Health.
We keep forgetting the health, guys.
Yeah, Proactive Health.
Get the wrong guy.
.com.
Same thing on Facebook, Proactive Health.
No. So proactivehealthmt.com. And repeat that number one more time, Mike.
Phone number is 241-2473.
And any parting words that you'd like to share with us to give some advice to our audience?
Summer's coming. What's the summer advice?
Summer advice, be proactive. And that, again, that's kind of a comprehensive approach. It's diet, it's exercise. I mean, depends on what your goal is. If you want to be looking good or you want weight loss, you have to address both sides of the game.
Great.
But the diet is the big one that gets ignored. It's undervalued. And so that's why I've kind of extended my aspirations to the health coaching realm
Well,
as
that's
well.
great. We really appreciate that. I can tell you that I've enjoyed my sessions with you this past couple of weeks, and we now have a convert in Scott, and hopefully
I love stuff like this, but you're serious, and I
Yeah,
can see
yeah.
that in his
Yeah,
eyes, and I can
totally.
and I get what he's doing. You know,
Yep.
this is great. So proactivehealthmt.com. You could reach Mike at 241-2473. He's located at 1906 Brook Street here in the Garden City. And his name is Mike Belkowski, and he just started his business, but he's got a lot of great things ahead of him. And we
thanks
look
for
forward to
being
your
on the show
progress.
Yeah, I
this
appreciate
week.
you guys
We
having
really
me.
appreciate-
It's been fun.
Okay.
You take care.
All
Thanks,
right,
you too.
Arnie, I'll see you next week and looking better than ever.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to What Do You Know?
I can't wait for the next show, Scott.
I'm excited too, Arnie. If you'd like to suggest a guest, send me an email at scottrichmond@townsquaremedia.com. We'll see you next week. And thanks for listening to Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290, 1015 FM, and newstalkkgvo.com.